Your buddy calls you at 2 a.m. He's in jail, accused of domestic violence. Just last week, it was only arguments he had between his spouse and talk of divorce. Now, he's facing charges under California Penal Code 273.5. What happens next could change his future, including custody of his kids. I'm Dan Kolacia, former prosecutor turned defense attorney, and in this video, we're going to discuss California domestic violence laws and your defenses. Before we dive into defenses, let's first understand what domestic violence is according to California law. Under California Penal Code 273.5, domestic violence is defined as the infliction of corporal injury on a spouse, cohabitant, or mother or father of your child. This could involve things like pushing, slapping, hitting, or any act that causes visible injury, such as bruises or cuts. Penal Code 243E1 is another key law used to charge domestic violence in California. This statute makes it a misdemeanor to use force or violence against a spouse, cohabitant, or significant other. The key difference here is that California Penal Code 243E1 involves lesser injuries. No visible injury is necessary, but still carries serious consequences. Now let's talk about what the prosecution needs to prove in order to get a conviction for domestic violence under California Penal Codes 273.5 or 243E1. For Penal Code 273.5, which is corporal injury to a spouse, the prosecution must prove 1. The victim is someone who qualifies under the law, spouse, cohabitant, or someone you've had a child with. 2. You willfully inflicted corporal injury on the victim, meaning it was intentional and not accidental. 3. The injury was visible or measurable, like bruising, cuts, or swells. And 4. There was no legal justification for your actions. For Penal Code 243E1, which is domestic battery, the prosecution has to prove 1. That you used force or violence against the victim. Just a harmful or offensive touching does not need to hurt someone or even leave a mark. Touching is enough. 2. The victim was someone you've had a relationship with, cohabitant, spouse, mother or father of a shared child. And 3, that force wasn't justifiable, meaning you can't claim you were defending yourself in this case. If the prosecution can't prove all of these elements beyond a reasonable doubt, then the case must be dismissed. So what are the penalties if you're convicted of domestic violence in California? Under corporal injury, which is Penal Code 273.5, it's considered a felony charge and it carries some very serious consequences. First, up to 4 years in state prison, fines of up to $6,000, probation with mandatory counseling and domestic violence programs, protective orders, criminal protective orders that could limit your contact with a victim or even your kids. And last, loss of firearm rights for life. On the other hand, domestic battery, which is 243E1, is a misdemeanor, but it still carries significant penalties, such as 1 year in county jail, fines of up to $2,000, and you'll be on probation for 36 months, which includes counseling and community service. You have to take a batterer's education class for 52 weeks, and you'll have a criminal record that impact your career, relationships, and reputation, and your firearm rights are gone for 10 years to life. As you can see, domestic violence convictions can result in long-lasting consequences, both personally and professionally. So it's crucial to understand the legal options available to you. Now let's talk about the top 3 defenses you can use to fight a domestic violence charge in California. The first defense are false accusations. Unfortunately, false accusations of domestic violence happen all too often, whether it's because of anger, revenge, or a misunderstanding. People sometimes make up stories to get back at their spouse or significant other. If we can show that the accusation isn't true, or if there's something conflicting in the evidence, we can often have the case dismissed or reduced. For example, let's say the alleged victim has a history of lying or making false police reports, or there's evidence that shows you were somewhere else at the time of the alleged incident. Eyewitness testimony, phone records, security footage could all be used to prove that the accusation was false. We see a lot of false accusations in these cases because California Family Code 3044, enacted in 2023, states, upon a finding of the court that a party seeking custody of a child has perpetrated domestic violence within the previous 5 years against the other party, there is a rebuttable presumption that an award of sole or joint physical and legal custody of the child to the person who has perpetrated the domestic violence is detrimental to the best interest of the child. In summary, if you are in a custody dispute with your children and your spouse accuses you of domestic violence, you could lose custody of your children. Because of this law, we have seen spouses making false accusations in these cases to get sole legal and physical custody. Be aware, false accusations are real, and you must get a skilled lawyer to bring out the truth and discredit the other side. The second defense is self-defense or defense of others. For example, if your partner was about to hit you with a golf club, this is a valid defense if you can show that you were acting to protect yourself or someone else from imminent harm, and you use force to take the golf club from the hand of your partner to protect yourself. This could be considered self-defense. The same applies if you're trying to protect a child or another witness who is at risk. However, it's important to note that the force must be reasonable. If you overreacted or if you continue to use force after the threat was gone, self-defense may not apply. Self-defense is such a powerful tool because you could prove it in court. The burden of proof shifts to the prosecution to prove beyond a reasonable doubt that the action was not self-defense. The third defense used often is lack of injury or inconsistent evidence. Under California Penal Code 273.5, which is corporal injury, the prosecution has to prove that there was a visible injury. If there's no injury, or if the injury is minor and doesn't match the severity of the alleged assault, this can work in your favor. We have seen cases where the reporting party will allege they were struck several times, like in the arm, but when they were photographed by police, there's no marks or no indication of violence. But you must remember, Penal Code 243E1, which is battery, the charge requires that the force or violence was used. If the victim didn't actually experience any harm or there are inconsistencies in their story, this could create reasonable doubt in the mind of the juries, but they don't have to show an injury. Conflicting testimony or lack of medical evidence can raise questions about the truth of the allegations, and a skilled defense attorney will search for those. So now to summarize, domestic violence under Penal Codes 273.5 and 243 is a serious charge that could lead to jail or prison time, fines, and mandatory counseling. The prosecution must prove that you intentionally inflicted harm or used violence without justification. Defenses like false accusations, self-defense, or lack of injury or inconsistent evidence are your best chance of fighting these charges. But no matter what, always get an experienced attorney on your side. As a former prosecutor, I understand how the other side thinks and how to challenge the evidence they present. The right lawyer can mean the difference between a conviction and a dismissal or reduced charges. If you're facing a domestic violence charge, don't hesitate to contact the Kolacia Law Firm. My firm has offices in Southern California. I've handled hundreds of these cases and know exactly how to protect your rights and fight for the best possible outcome. Did you know that even if you beat your domestic violence case, you could face penalties that could cause you to lose access to your kids? Check out this video where I break down the different types of restraining orders related to domestic violence cases and what you can do to protect yourself if you're facing one. See you over there.